If you are a remote worker, does that mean that you have to work from your house location? Now, I'm going to give my opinion about this, and I'm going to give the current opinion prevalent to companies out there. So when remote work went crazy at the start of the pandemic and everybody was home, there was no rules to this. It was not a defined thing for a lot of companies because they'd never had anybody work remote before. So the expectation by most companies at that time was that, well, you couldn't go anywhere, so you're going to sit at your desk in your house, in your whatever home office setup that you have, and you're going to work your 8, 10, 12 hours a day like normal, like you did at your job, and you're going to be right there and fully available the whole time. And then jobs started to get listed as work at home, and jobs started to get listed as remote. And a lot of people assumed that those were the same things. Now, they are the same things to the people working those jobs. They are not the same things to the companies posting those roles, because most companies are assuming that you're home at your desk in your home office the same way that they would be assuming that you're at work at your desk in their office. But then people are like, well, I can work from anywhere. So people moved. You moved to Montana where you always wanted to move. And then you were still in your home office, but you worked far away from the location. So when then companies went and did return to office mandates, then companies were put up with a choice because they're like, well, Bob moved to Montana. What do we do now? And then companies either had to hold a hard line. Well, we told people they have to come back to office. Or you were like, well, Bob's critical. We can't lose him. We're going to continue to allow him to work remote. But then other people took it a step further. People started to digital nomad. People started to, instead of taking a week's vacation, they went to stay because their mom was sick. They stayed at their mom's for a week, but they worked from their computer at their mom's. And then something as simple as the background of where the home office was would come up and people would be like, oh, aren't you at home? And you'd be like, oh, my mom's in Virginia right now because she's sick, but I'm still working. Sometimes that worked for companies. Sometimes they didn't, depending on what the manager's understanding of as to what that was okay or what. They'd be like, well, you didn't notify us you're going to go out of state. So this started to create some problems. So then you had people who would go to the pool that day and they'd take their laptop with them and they'd sit into their cabana and they would be working all day and they'd take dip in the pool on their breaks and on their lunch. And then somebody at the company would do a Teams call with no warning. And then all of a sudden there'd be kids walking by in the background. The sun would be shining. Somebody'd walk by with a beer in the background. They'd be like, why aren't you working? And you'd be like, I am working. I'm sitting here. I've been working for 6 hours. Just so happens to be that I'm working at the pool today. And then some companies were not cool with that. And some companies were okay with that, depending on if you're getting your work done. So the problem was the perception that other people either had to be in the office or had to be